The Zank Youth Programs with the EFO Initiative for Young Writers and the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation brings you Empowered High School's Poetry Podcast, our conversation with award-winning poet and writer and University of Michigan's Helen Zell Writers Program alum, Marcelo Hernandez Castillo, Spring 2025. Empowered, a collaboration between the Zank Youth Programs, the EFO Initiative for Young Writers, and the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation proudly presents our Poets and Writers Conversations series, a creative podcast project by high school students for high school students. Curated by our young writers, this intimate discussion of poetry, stories, and interviews dives into the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we make, break, and recreate, with award-winning author Marcelo Hernandez Castillo. Join us as we explore the power of words in storytelling, bridging the gap between oral traditions and the digital age.
Hello.
Hey, it's really wonderful to get to have you here on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
It was really nice visit today.
Yeah,
I feel like it's not often that we get like writers here. I mean, every once in a while, but like it's nice to have a writer because then you get like a different perspective on writing, especially from someone who is like really successful.
I wouldn't say that. I mean,
Come on, give yourself a little bit of credit. Like, it's a really great book.
Thank you. Yeah, it wasn't until like maybe grad school that I even saw writers like in my vicinity, like coming that I saw in person, and that was really cool just to see. You know, what TV are you watching? Like, what shows are you watching right now? Because yeah, certainly when I was like in high school, I thought the only poets were like dead white poets.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's valid.
But no, it's thriving. There's so many people writing poetry. I mean, I just got back from the conference, AWP conference, and there was like 15,000 writers and editors,
Wow.
in attendance. So yeah, it's growing. There's a lot of young poets writing really cool stuff. So I'm excited about that.
Love to hear it. All right, you mind I get to my first question then?
Yeah, please.
So I guess my first question is about the foreword in your book. Who is Brenda Shaughnessy to you? Like, because I feel like with the foreword, you're gonna pick someone to write it who is really important to you and you feel will give the best opinion. Well, I guess not the best opinion, but like something really important, and like will bring something to the table. So who is she to you?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I've never been asked that. I've never been asked a question about the foreword. Wow, I've been touring with this book for what is it now? 7 years, more than 7 years, and no one has asked me that. So to answer your question, I didn't choose that.
Oh.
Brenda chose my book as a winner.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I just submitted my book to the April and Junior Prize from BOA Editions. And the only thing is who the judge is going to be. And so with these prizes, like you have a guest judge. They're not like affiliated with the press or anything, but they're just invited to be the ones to choose like the manuscript that wins. So I didn't read the foreword at all until it was published. I didn't know like there was like gonna be a foreword, and I especially didn't know what she would say. Yeah, until I saw the final. No, it wasn't even until I saw it in paper. And when I read it, I read it once, like 7 years ago, but I don't think I've ever read it again. It feels weird to read that, but I'm very grateful. I knew her work. That's why I submitted to the press, because mentors of mine told me, like, in these kinds of scenarios where it's a guest judge, I had come close, like finalist in like a bunch of little places in the times before. Like, as I mentioned, it was rejected a lot of times before that for like 5 years or so. and it always was just like always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Yeah.
Like it just got really, really close. And at that point, it's really about like finding one of the contests that has the right like judge who you like their work, that that your work is in conversation with them, and then that the press also is a press that you would be happy to be with. And I was lucky enough that Brenda Shaughnessy ended up selecting the book, and not only that, but that the press is one that has been really, really kind, very hardworking. They really pushed the book. And since then, I think we talked like once, but I'm really like shy of talking to her because, man, she lit the spark to from which everything else followed. I've always wanted to like spend more time and say, hey, she's in New York, to tell her like, let's get dinner,
Yeah,
as a
should.
token of appreciation for seeing my work. I know she talks about music. So yeah, I'm just very grateful to her. And the greatest honor you can have is for somebody to read your work and understand it.
Yeah, absolutely.
For someone to be able to talk about your work in a way that you really intended,
Yeah.
but also in new ways that you might not have ever considered or thought about. And it's cool when you hear like how somebody else read it in a way that maybe wasn't on your radar. And that was really cool. So I'm grateful to Brenda. I read all her work. I'm a fan of hers,
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like shy to like reach out because it's Brenda Shaughnessy. She's like this huge writer, and I was very much like a lonely grad student when I was, well, by the time I got picked up, I wasn't anymore. I was probably still lonely, but not a grad student. So yeah.
I mean, I'd encourage you to reach out. Like, it might be a good experience. You might learn something from it,
Yeah. I mean, we briefly talked, but and so I've judged contests since then in myself. Being like on this side of it has been really interesting and gave me a little bit more appreciation for those times that I came just close, because I know when I boiled it down to like 5 or even like 3 authors, like it is one of the most difficult things to have to decide, but ultimately like I can only choose one. Sometimes you can choose like one and then the editorial it gets picked up by the press like regardless. But when I'm like making those decisions, I'm like thinking to myself like, please apply next year. Please apply next year. Like the things just have to like click. And so I look back to when I was sending it out and getting all these rejections. Yeah, there were rejections, but they were very encouraging, and I know that that those decisions don't come easy. So it kind of like gave me a new perspective about this whole thing that we do, and how like all the mechanisms happen. So yeah, it's not that they didn't like my work; it's that they really liked it, But there's so many other factors that go into it that are out of your control, that really tiny adjustments that make it to be one person versus another. But no, she saw me. She had really good things to say about me, and for that I'm like eternally grateful.
That's good. I have a bit more of a sort of a broad question, but how would you describe like your poetry style and your like preferred themes, and like how have they sort of changed as you've grown as a writer?
Oh yeah, I opened up a document recently that I forgot. I had these like 25, 30 pages that I completely forgot I had written, but they were 25, 30 pages that I removed from the manuscript when I was, finalizing it, putting it together for to start sending it out. And I was reading through them and I was like, my God, this is a whole different poet. They are very, very similar to the poems in their, in like their, I don't know, they were just a lot more imagistic, a lot more lyrical, a little bit, I mean, I don't want to say cryptic, but maybe more like difficult to access. And so reading back through that document, kind of really made me realize just how much my poetry has changed. And between this one and the poems that I'm writing now, there was a memoir. So there was like a departure from poetry into prose, and that did, I think, kind of mess up my poems. Not to disparage prose, but it made me write poetry in a different way, still about the same subject matter. Like I was mentioning about like your obsessions.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have your obsessions no matter what. You're gonna be obsessed with them. You might acquire new obsessions, but you might not necessarily lose other obsessions. But the work that I'm working on now is a lot less veiled, is a lot less figurative. It's a lot less like lyrically associated, and a lot of that has to do with the situation that I was going through at that time versus at this time. Like when I wrote those poems, I was undocumented. When I'm writing these poems, I have since, gained protections. And that really changed the poems of like what I could say, how I could say it without risking, either my safety or the safety of my family, people who I write about. So I think that definitely has something to do with it. One of my co-organizers who organizes Undocupoets, Janine Joseph, we were on a panel last week, and she was talking about this precise thing, and she says that her poems acted, the way she understood her poems is that she was giving a secret to her poems to keep. And that she could trust the poems to not like give away those secrets, but that she could have them as a repository. And that's how I kind of approached my first book of poems. And in this new work that I'm writing, I feel like I don't have the luxury to be misunderstood in a way that I did there. The luxury to be misinterpreted, because things have changed. Yes and no, right? That was published in 2018, so we are right back in the same administration as when it was published. But it was written during it was published in 2018, but it was written in different years. And so with the kind of surveillance that is happening now by every enforcement agency under the sun, and the heightened kind of surveillance on social media, on anything you publish, I didn't want to have somebody understand my poem in any other way other than like how I wanted to tell them. And it's not like, I'm like suddenly hiding. No, it's the opposite. Like I don't want to hide behind the veil of figurative meaning, behind the veil of symbolism. And so the new work that I have right now takes its material from found data, found congressional records, congressional appropriations committees, data on statistics in prisons, in detention centers. And so that's something, as I mentioned, like in Sensontle, there isn't a place, a time, like a particular, necessarily like particular people that you can like look up. A few people just are named. I think only one is my uncle who passed away, Ramon. But this new work that I'm doing is kind of the opposite of that. It's more direct. I think because of going through the memoir, like the memoir, like you're in front of the words instead of like behind them. And because of that, I think it's difficult to open up that document and be like, I want to put those poems into like this new work. They don't belong in this new work either. So, they were of a time, and that time has passed. Who knows, maybe in the future I'll come back to them. But at least for the time being right now, that's what it's a very distinct difference that I noticed.
Kind of relating to like your writing style, like what is your writing process? Like, do you have an experience and as soon as like it happens, you're like, ooh, that would be something I could write about, and you just kind of like write it down and save it for later?
I really wish I wish it was that
I
easy.
don't know. I mean,
I wish it was that easy or transactional. Like experience poem. Experience
it doesn't
poem.
always directly translate. But like do you have like a space that you just kind of like you sit here and you like, is it special to you maybe?
It's hard because I'm on the road a lot. I teach a lot. And with the years, it's been, I have a son now, and then I didn't have a son then. He's 7. So that requires a lot of my attention. And so it's become harder and harder to like devote the kind of space that I had while I was here at the University of Michigan when I was a grad student, in which my job was to write. That was the thing. I had a lot of feelings about that because I felt like guilty because, my family was back home working 8, 10, 12-hour shifts. And that's what I had always done, up until that point. And when my job was suddenly like, oh, you just have to like write a couple poems a week, and read, like that is your job. It was really difficult to like reconcile that. But as the years have gone by, it's been really difficult to dedicate like I'm gonna take out like three hours to like write this. So what I think what's happened is I have tried to take advantage of lines and bits and notes that come from different pieces, different things. Like something will just like make me think of a particular line, mostly for like its sound. And then something that I'm really actively doing is like writing at the most unlikeliest and inopportune moments, in the most unlikeliest and inopportune times, because little by little that adds up. But if I say, okay, no, I'm gonna like wait till Saturday when I have like the day to myself, it might not come on Saturday. And so I've just wasted those moments when I was engaged with that image in a way that would have turned it into something, and yet I waited. So my process right now is like it's a little bit more scattershot. If I'm waiting at the doctor, I always write my poems longhand, and then I transfer them back to the computer, and then I'll write them back longhand, and then I'll write them back to the computer, and that back and forth is basically like my process. Like that has been tried and true. That's never failed me because something always changes, no matter what. I have yet to rewrite a poem and transfer it over to from typed to recording and then transcribing it as I'm hearing it again, nothing has ever like not changed, even if it's like one word. And so like my biggest enemy is copy paste.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Because I don't see like my own blind spots. What I thought was good about the poem, I will still continue thinking it is good for the duration of like my working on it, because I'm not entering the poem anymore. I'm just like visiting this little gem of like that I found, but I'm not entering the poem again and re-experiencing it. And so when that happens again, then I realize like, oh, maybe that wasn't as great as I thought it was. And so that's been like my tried and true method of just doing that over and over and over again, either until the deadline comes or I've rewritten it to the point where I'm okay with the changes are very minor. They're not going to be like, major changes. It might be just something for clarity or something like that. But yeah, I could go at it forever if I really wanted to, but sometimes something else gets my attention, so that changes.
I have a question about specifically this book.
Yeah.
So the title, correct me if I'm wrong, is Senzontle?
You got it.
Hey.
You're like at the top 99% of people who can pronounce it. Thank you for thank you for that.
Spanish class. So why did you choose this as like your title piece, and like what's the significance of like the mockingbird?
Yeah. So yeah, Senzontle is the northern mockingbird. It had a different title. I'm terrible at titles. So it wasn't until like I looked at it together that I kind of like made sense of that first opening poem as like the logic behind what was to come. And it wasn't the first poem in the book. That wasn't the title. And changing the title makes it a different book, right? Had it been, I forgot all the titles it had before then, but I guess it speaks to like not having your own language, the Senzontle being the Nawa word for mockingbird. And Senzontle is like a bird of 400 tongues. And so I think the metaphors all presented themselves, in a way that it added to the poems rather than distracted. And I feel like all the other titles that I had were distracted or took the book in a different direction, because you're experiencing that book now through this different title. So you have different expectations. You have different questions, if it were to be titled The Future. Right?
Oh, do you have a favorite poem from the collection? Like, I mean, I bet it's probably been a long time since you've read it, but like, is there any off the top of your head that you were like, this poem I'm really proud of?
Also, I've never been asked that, so that's super too.
I feel like that's like something
classic question.
No,
yeah.
because the question is always like, who's your favorite author, but not like which one of the poems is like my favorite one. I would say the opening one, the first one.
Yeah, that's fair.
The title poem. I really like it. It's always, I've never wanted to change it afterwards, after the fact. Like, oh, I wish I had done this different. So I think that's why.
Yes, writing a poem without like any regrets is such a good feeling.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes. So that one's the one I have least regrets about.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah,
Thank you so
That's an
much.
honor.
This was great. I really loved it. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your questions.
Anytime. Yeah, thank you so much. Like, California is a long way. So like coming all the way here, I mean, I get you're traveling all the time, but like just coming here to our school, like that's probably a big thing, you know?
Yeah, no, this was a highlight. Yeah, I'm headed to Georgia after this.
Wow.
So, but this was really wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Our Empowered High School's micro podcast production, our Poets and Writers Conversation series, has been brought to you by Design Books and Design Youth Programs with the EFO Initiative for Young Writers and the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation. Thank you for your support in making this program possible. With our empowered poets, writers, readers, future leaders, and podcasters, Stefan Gader, Lauren Robert, Gwen Galvin, and Jade Glaza. Special thanks go to our interviewers, mentors, and visiting artists, poets, and writers, Gwen Galvin, Jade Glaza, Jeff Cass, Pioneer High, and the Barnes & Noble Writers for Writers Award recipient, poet and author, Marcelo Hernandez Castillo, and to the entire team at Blue Flower, we thank you.